Live, People Need Avenue. It's the DammitJim Show with your distractor chief, Sideshow Tom, and your host with the most, DammitJim.
Hello, everybody.
And everybody that needs work. So
It does. So, everybody, this is the initial recording for the DammitJim podcast. So, we're doing kind of a workshop thing. So, we're going to try a few things. Like I said, the intro we want to have a little fun with. We're not really ready for it, so we're saying, hey, why don't you guys give us some feedback?
Only about the intro. We don't care about anything else you have to say.
Actually, that's the opposite of what I was going to say, but you know, both ways work for two. So anyway, this is the new podcast. I'm going to put up a little link in a video in a slide here in a second. That's going to tell you like how to contact us. You can either email me. We got Jim. It's basically DammitJim podcast at Gmail. Twitter. We have a Twitter account at DammitJim podcast. Or is it DammitJim pod? You know what? It'll be right on the slide. It's wrong now. So you can catch me on email. If you know me, email. There'll also be a Facebook page, DammitJim podcast.
And if your tweets
Facebook
are actually worth discussing, we'll do that.
We'll do that too. Yeah, absolutely. So at any rate, so this podcast that I've talked to a few people about it. But essentially, we're going to have a number of different topics. We definitely want to talk about politics because it's something that we're both very passionate about. We have our ideas, and we've just seen the civil discourse just degrade to a degree that's
just not healthy or really constructive. And people aren't having any kind of genuine discussion where ideas are exchanged in any kind of civil manner to get us to a point where we can move forward.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, because I have really good friends who are conservatives and really good friends who are liberals and pretty much everything in between. And, you know, we get along great. Then you bring up politics and, you know, that's World War III. Everybody wants to have a revolution or, you know, you're morons and idiots. And it's just not the reality of it. I think
and you hate America.
You hate America.
At that point,
or you love America, but you hate parts of America and you can't figure out. And plus, I also we're going to discuss media.
Labels.
A lot of labels, a lot of the way they take a word and then beat that word to death and associate anybody that they don't like with that word to immediately destroy their credibility. At the end of the day, it doesn't really help anybody. And it's also, you know, if we want to mention, we should also let them know it's kind of based on the old ideal of the the town pub, the ale house, where people would come together and discuss all things. It was like
birthing furnace
and they
of socio-political ideas.
Mm-hmm. And they would actually hold the elections at the ale house. I mean, it was really a big part of the social fabric. And that's pretty much been destroyed because if you bring up politics or religion at a bar today, yeah, be ready to fight because usually it just you know what, this doesn't turn out well usually. So we want to make it turn out well. So as we talk through it, we're going to give you our ideas. We're going to give you our thoughts on things. We actually obviously have our own worldview. But we want to hear back from you. So when you hear things, if you want to get a hold of us or even come on the show, we're going to have opportunities for folks to come on and basically give us their side or tell us why they think we're either really, really smart or, you know, not so much. So anyway, with that.
So let that, Jim, going. Just start.
Let's start. Here we go.
What's on your mind today, sir?
What's on my mind today? Well, we've got a few things. We've got, the G20 just wrapped up and we don't have a whole lot of details. I haven't spent a ton of time on that.
It ended today, yeah.
Yeah, it just wrapped up. And I don't think we looked good in that conversation.
No, it was
There seems to be a lot of reports coming out that
horrific.
You know, they were basically no longer the moral leader of the free world. And our credibility has been... people just don't. I guess one of the real comments that came out of it, and it's a smaller one, but to me it really impacted, was like they didn't feel that anything that the United States agreed to economically would hold because they just don't take the leadership seriously. And call it what you will, the fact that the credibility isn't there. I mean, the United States...
And they automatically, day one, all lined up and said unequivocally that the Paris Agreement is in effect for everyone but you. And it's 19 of us lined up against your, completely off-kilter worldview of what is happening in the environment.
Well, I thought you had a great point earlier today. We were chatting. Is that it's like, listen, when China is more liberal in their views,
in their environmental policy, where the fucking Yangtze River runs orange because it's so much full pollution.
Yeah, when you're on the other side of that argument with them, I think you got to check yourself a little bit. And which also leads to a recent story this week that really got my attention was Scott Pruitt, and his decision to have this sort of split A/B teams of scientific boards of scientific, so basically climatologists that believe in the global warming, and a group of scientists that don't.
Like what, 3?
I don't know which scientists
Who
he's going
are
to
these
get.
fuckers?
But he didn't even say there were scientists. He just said there's going to be panels.
Oh,
And a lot of people say, well, yeah, let them have at it. And I guess there's a little bit of benefit to that.
I don't see any benefit to that. That is not in any way constructively moving us forward. Actually, it is.
Well, it's just scientifically
I saw a really
absurd,
good article. I think it was either in the Post or on National Geographic. It might have been, where they're saying that pretty much because of the doubting that has gone on, the client scientists have buttoned up all of the science. So to the point where now the data behind it is pretty much indisputable. Like, so it's forced this level of data proof that they wouldn't have gone to necessarily anyway, because all the scientific, the respected scientific community already believes it, so they don't need any more proof per se.
Right.
But because of this doubt, they just went all out and it's unequivocally true of everything that they've been talking about client science. Right.
Well, I think that one of the keys about this one that's going to be interesting, and this is where I really want to hear what the conservative folks that don't agree with this, how they exactly come to these points. And one thing that, let me just go back to the format a little bit. There's a couple things here that we thought about. We kind of skipped over was, first of all, if anybody has an opinion, I don't really care, or we don't really care what you think as much as why you think it. In other words, there has to be some sort of logical chain of events and information that leads you to support that viewpoint. And I think that gives it validity. You can't just say, "Oh, global warming is a bunch of BS." The scientists are all on the government payroll. It's all a conspiracy. That could be 100% true. But if you don't have anything to back it up. So, and the other question is, what are the sources that you use and things like that? We talked a little bit about this. I have different sources that I like. And actually, I want to spend a little segment on that. So I'm going to skip back and come back to that later about where do you go for your information? That's kind of important in my thought, in the show. So we'll talk a little bit of that. So, but getting back to the client, the climate conversation we were just having, the point I was going to make is, when you give sort of, I think it's kind of good that we have this debate, because like you said, everything's being buttoned up in a way because they have to, because people who refuse to believe, no matter how much information is there, is requiring them to be a little bit more exact than they feel they need to, because the science is so overwhelming.
Yes. Which
even take a step further, when you talk about a theory, people really screw up the word theory versus hypothesis. They really mess that up. When you have a theory, essentially, in a very basic way, that means the information is so overwhelmingly pointing in one direction, you'd kind of have to be crazy to come to any other conclusion. But it's not
just information, data,
data.
Hard data, analysis, statistics, studies, time over time that show this data extrapolated over an extended amount of time.
Right. It's no longer a hypothesis. A hypothesis is like, based on preponderance of information, I have a feeling that, that all planets would have gravity. Because we have gravity, it would make sense that they would have gravity. But you have to go out and prove it, in ways that create enough information that it becomes a theory. And then there's laws. So, theories are the overlying thing, and there's laws underneath that. Like, gravity is a theory, but there's also laws of gravity, which essentially says that once you accept the theory, then these laws will always apply. But it's still a theory, because we can't necessarily test gravity in certain ways throughout the universe. And we're also finding there's actually exceptions to gravity in certain situations that we don't understand yet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the most important thing, is to understand that this whole panel is kind of a sideshow, because you haven't met the scientific validity to be in the conversation against that theory. They haven't presented any papers or equal information that makes them equal. So putting them on the same stage, it's sort of like putting a Holocaust denier and a historian about the Holocaust on the same stage. That implies that the Holocaust denier somehow has credibility,
right,
when they've proven none. They've done none of the work to get there, but they're automatically saying, "Oh, you have to have two sides of a conversation." Well, that's a false equivalency. You have to have something. So I've kind of rambled a little bit here, but the most important thing I'm trying to point out is that there has to be a logical, reasonable reason why you believe what you believe if you want to present it here. And I'm happy to hear it. I'm happy to hear whatever your opinions are, but understand that there has to be some information to back that up. So,
Word.
All right.
So we were talking about the G20 and how
Yeah, we were.
we aren't just completely, and then there's obviously the blatant, Americans are, you're being led by a buffoon, and none of us agree with your climate policy because it's completely not scientifically based. That was pretty bad. But then
Right.
he sends in Ivanka to sit for him
Right.
in front of these guys who are world leaders,
Mm-hmm.
and this girl's, she's all right. Sorry, I don't want to be disrespectful. She is a woman, right? And
Yeah. Well, we
she's
don't want to dip.
yeah, but and in her sphere of real estate business, I'd be fine with her sitting at the table. But these are world leaders on a global economic summit, a bit out of her depth. And it's insulting to those gentlemen and women who are sitting there, who this is their livelihood, this is their life. They're fully invested in geopolitical politics and economics and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
To have her being put on the same playing field as they are.
Well, what would be interesting to prove, kind of to back up what you're saying, is if everybody at that table, if you just could get a copy of their resume, like what exactly have you done with your life that led to you being at this meeting and then in that seat,
Right.
and what are your qualifications? And I think that you'd begin to see that there's such a separation in terms of exceptional work and exceptional work and study that got you there, that you
Right.
got that position.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what your politics are at that point. It's just like, do you really deserve to be at the table? And I think it was an insult. Ivanka may have been you could even say she's like, hey, she might be the smartest person in the room. That could possibly be happening, but she's got nothing to back that up.
Right.
And then you're going to represent the most powerful country in the world. She's literally a rich guy's daughter,
Kid.
a grandfather who was rich.
Right.
I mean, Donald Trump came to New York City with a measly $240 million in his pocket. And, hey, he's done some incredible things. There's a lot of rich kids that never did what he did. I'll give him that. But this is the world stage. At what point do we respect education? Do we respect expertise? Do we
Yes.
respect
It's big.
the
It's
people
more
that
about
put the
him.
work in?
Yes, exactly. It's more about him, his lack of reverence for these people, that he can just throw his kid in there. Hey, yeah, I'm gonna go to this other meeting. She's gonna take over. Like, what? Are you fucking kidding?
Because, yeah.
You really? No, it's like you should be the Secretary of State. Where was Rex Tillerson? Why wasn't he sitting there in instead?
Good point.
It should be some true, actual person in the cabinet who has power to negotiate whatever the fuck it is they're negotiating. And how? Again, like you said, they're just like, okay, they're not really taking anything we've done seriously, or they're not taking anything from the U.S. seriously. Well, of course they're not. Ivanka Trump is there negotiating. I mean,
Yeah.
how could they possibly take anything seriously when it's not even one of the people in the cabinet, debating policy?
Yeah, it was a bad, very, very, again, another social faux pas that he's made. But he's doing it on the world stage, and I think this matters to us. It matters to me. Obviously matters to you, and it matters to a lot of Americans. They're just embarrassed. They're embarrassed by the tweeting. They're embarrassed by, he was a bad hire. That's the
like
best
I said
thing
today,
I can say
man.
about
It's
him.
like it just gets worse every day. I try and not look at it that way because there's there's such ardent supporters of him out there, but I think they're just blindly wanting to be on the side of what they think is the winner. Is the only way I can properly phrase it in my mind, because everything he is doing is morally and politically reprehensible, from every other standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
He's done none of the things he said. Like, most importantly, this is the one that I really like to hone in on, is the draining of the swamp. He has absolutely not done that. There are multiple Goldman Sachs and Wall Street executives in his cabinet, in his staff, right? The people he railed against and said that Hillary Clinton was in cahoots with from day one, and that she was their shill. And sure the fuck enough, he's got these same people that probably she would have put into her cabinet more than likely,
Yeah.
or one, in a lesser form, or some other from Morgan, from one of the other brokerage firms versus the ones he chose,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and no one says anything about, give him more time. What do you mean? He stocked the whole can full of the same fuckers that every other Republican would have stocked it full of.
Well, I heard somebody just yesterday tell me, it's like, well, he's just not experienced in politics, and he's learning his way around, and da 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 da. Here's the thing. I'm trying to understand, the thought, and I think I understand one thing that is, there was a change. Hillary Clinton, for all of her resume, which I talked about resumes earlier, was not very inspiring to a lot of people. In fact, part of that could be the fact that she was under attack for 20 years by the right.
Well, to me, that's a different
The other
conversation.
part of it is she didn't overcome it.
Like, there's one conversation, like the deficiencies of him as, and then there's the election itself.
Right. Well, what I was getting at was why folks voted for him and still support him.
Right.
Is because you have all that, and it has, a lot of it's worldview. We all have a blind spot for our own personal political view of the world. You read an article, if you have a certain worldview, you're going to see the information that supports what you already believe, and that's what you're going to kind of grab onto. That's impossible for any of us to really avoid. So you've got a guy like Donald Trump, and people go, why are they still supporting him? Well, they have a blind spot for a lot of that stuff because he says other things that they truly they believe or they want to believe. And so I think that the problem was Hillary, obviously had a lot of problems, but when Donald Trump was running, they heard those messages of hope. They heard that everyman language, and they keyed in on that. And then now these presidents, like, well, man, they're just attacking him because he's different and he's outside the box, and we love that he's shaking things up because we just didn't want any more of the same. The question is, well, why don't you want any more of the same? What exactly is it that you want to change in this country, and why? And I think that those are the more interesting questions and deeper questions, because when you get into, people say, well, I hate Obamacare. Okay, tell me why. And most people can't really verbalize or reason specifically, but other than my premiums have gone way up. You're like, okay, well, that's absolutely a concern. We both agree with that. Everybody agrees with that. I don't want to pay all this money for healthcare. This is insane how much money we pay for healthcare.
Yes. But
to blame it on Obamacare, and you're like, well, is it really Obamacare's fault? Because there's you can get two beds of information. One says, well, Obamacare actually slowed the rate of increase. Had there been no Obamacare, your rates would have been even higher. They'll say BS because, and the main reason I think is because they were able to sell policies that didn't have the same level of coverage, basically BS policies, but you had coverage, quote unquote,
and it was cheaper.
Yeah, but if you had a pre-existing condition or you met a less, or they could just drop your ass.
Yeah, they could just drop you,
and that kind of gets left. So the point is, we all want the same thing, but the way that information is delivered to you, depending on where you get it from, will kind of drive like.
Well, what I like, to me, what's positive out of the healthcare debate is there's a group of moderate Republicans in not just in the Congress, but in out in the population who say, okay, yeah, you need to do better than Obamacare. You need to stop the rate increases. Like, you need to do something to essentially fix healthcare, not continue, because they're all focusing on the high premiums and the cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. What are you going to do to control costs? Because nothing that they put forward really controls costs in any way, shape, or form. Premiums will still go up in some fashion. It might slow it down, but because, like you said, like there will be policies out there that are cheaper, that only cover a few things for young people or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, they totally. One of the big things that Obamacare brought to the table, and people have sort of raised their awareness, is the pre-existing conditions and the lifetime limits. And listen, you get cancer, and they go, "Oh, wow, you're going to be expensive. We'll cut you off. Sorry, you hit $1 million. What? If you've seen the way hospitals charge, you're going to hit $1 million for a freaking nosebleed if you just play it right."
It's like $16,000. I was there for less than 24 hours when I had my appendix taken out.
Yeah.
And it was laparoscopic. It wasn't like they had to open me up. 16 hours, or it was like, or 18 hours. I was like there total $16,000.
I was there I had epidurals in my back when I blew my back out, and I paid the anesthesiologist $550 to give me the shot, which I paid happily because he was sticking a big ass needle in my spine.
Well, sure.
I'll pay you $550 because I want whatever you want. But I had to meet him at the hospital, and I got a bill from the hospital for literally, I was in there maybe an hour and a half. I mean, and that included me walking to the door from my car. It took me like a good half an hour to walk in because I was bent over. My back was so bad. Got me in there, maybe 30-minute procedure by the time it was all said and done, maybe 45 with the nursing checking me and all that kind of stuff. And they sent me a bill for $1,250 to use the bed. $1,200 just to use the bed. That was not the doctor fee. That was not the medicine fee. That was just to use the bed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you could have done this in my car.
Yeah.
I went, you know what? And for $1,250, I would have done it in my car. I actually had to skip one of my shots. I was supposed to have 3. I only got 2 because I just didn't have enough money to cover that damn
Right.
thing. And my coverage didn't cover any of that.
Right.
I think that they consider that an 80-20 thing. It wasn't a primary care. I'm like, I don't understand how blowing out your back's on a primary care. But
Well, that's the thing. They're allowed to make these little, riders that essentially don't cover these incidents, which somehow they can determine are medically not major. Which is, how can an insurance company make that call? I mean, that's the only one person that makes that call, and that's your doctor.
You can thank
End of
Richard
story.
M. Nixon for that one.
Yeah.
It is Milford Nixon. Yeah, Richard. You can thank him for that one. I think it was 1973 that he signed that HMO bill, that Kaiser Permanente. Do you remember this?
No, I don't remember that.
So go back and look
I was
up.
not born. So
well, you weren't born, but
therefore,
you were a history major, right?
I don't remember. There's a lot of things I know about Richard M. Nixon, but I didn't know now about the healthcare thing.
Well, the healthcare thing, he basically signed the bill that introduced the HMO, which essentially turned healthcare into this sort of profitable business.
Yep.
And you've seen, and I'm a capitalist. Don't misunderstand me, but there are certain things that should not be ruled by pure capitalistic rules, and healthcare is one of them because they've monetized healthcare.
Yeah, obviously they monetize and not just monetize. I mean, clearly making profit off the sick and dying. I mean, that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. I
don't
mean,
see how that's gonna be. I don't see how you can see that in their way.
Insurance is always, people have always kind of had like a slant eye at insurance because insurance is kind of a bit of a Ponzi scheme or a betting game. But I think the fact that people are monetizing something that should be, and they're afraid of the whole socialist word, but should just be a pot that we can all draw from.
Of course, it should be.
It's like your fire department or your police. Hey, I've never had to call the fire department. I've never had to call the police department.
I'm happy my taxes go. No, well,
but I'm
happy.
Actually, I have to call the fire department when I fell off the roof, but that's a whole other story. But besides that, but I paid like a good chunk of money for that. But anyway, but the point is that they're there, and the police are there, and the roads are paved, and the stoplights work, and all that stuff.
Mostly,
they mostly work.
Yeah.
But they work pretty damn well. I think it's pretty good times, and I don't have to pay for those services like as I use them. They're just, we understand that that's a part of the social network that exists now. And
but that's breaking apart. I mean, I read a really good.
Trying to break it apart.
Well, I read a really good article
because they want to go back to 200 years when people rode horses and you needed a house and you didn't need the government at all. Well, now we live in a much more integrated technological world,
right,
which requires a lot more base services. Then I'm sorry, but taxes have to pay for if you want to live in the modern world. But when you monetize things, I mean, monetizing healthcare is insanity to me. Think about this. So healthcare is something that you need from the time you're born to the time you die. And the times in your life that you need it, right, are when you're either a child or when you're extremely elderly. That's the time you need healthcare the most. The 2 times of those 3 times in your life that you have the least ability to earn money. Right. So how the hell can that be a commodity that I have to pay for when you almost by design, by automatically have to rely on somebody else to provide your healthcare? It's almost guaranteed.
And it's funny, like the Medicaid is incredibly popular among the elderly.
Well, Medicare is Medicare. Well, actually, Medicaid and Medicare. Yeah, but they don't touch my Medicare. Get the government out of my Medicare. Actually, so somebody signed in one of the memes that went out there. But anyway, it's something that people need from the time they're born to the time they die. But most importantly, they need it when they have no ability to earn money. If you're 80 years old and you need a kidney transplant, you're not like,
just slide the revolver across the table.
Ernest Thompson style. Yeah.
I mean, if that's what they tell me at 80, I'm not going to need a kidney transplant.
When you talk about death panels, like here,
slide the 357 across the table.
If you need a kidney transplant at 80, no, that's just horrible. I mean, we have I've often said this. We have like the best medical care in the world with like the worst delivery system. Unless you're loaded.
Yeah, that's even debatable. Yeah, the outcomes. I mean, I think they did this thing with the World Health Organization, and we rank with Yugoslavia in developed countries as for the expected life expectancy of a grown man and woman.
That's
so that's like 13th or 14th, I think it was, that we ranked.
Cheetos might have something to do with that, but
we spend the most and get the least.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was doing this math the other day, and here's something for people that are listening. And I think that in order for us to do like the England's version of the healthcare system, not the British English, I think it's Britain, but it would essentially cost the United States approximately $1 trillion to replicate that healthcare system. We already pay more than we pay like 1.4 trillion. I don't know what the number is exactly, but we already paid more for that. But to replicate the universal healthcare they have in England, would cost us about $1 trillion. And if you divide that by 330 million people, I think that comes out to like $3,300 a head per year.
Right.
So do that math. I mean, that's for a lot of people, that's just a month or two, maybe 3 of healthcare payments, right? Or insurance payments.
Yep.
You know, for those who got to pay. So obviously, the 330 million of us are not all earning money. Some of them are infants, some of them are elderly, some of them are whatever. But the point is that, you know, the universal healthcare, the single payer system that everybody is just, oh, that's socialized medicine, da 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 da. What I don't understand is how come those that are in favor have not sold it on the financial benefit? Like, what's it going to cost you a year to have universal health care versus what you pay right now for insurance?
And on top of
that way, if you don't want it, hey, man, you're only paying a few $100 for it, you know, a month as opposed to $1,000 a month. And if you want more, you know, you can go out and buy the extra insurance or get the premium.
Doesn't mean health insurance goes anywhere. You can still go and get beyond the health care that the state provides. There are doctors who will take your money. No one will not take your money anymore.
Your money is welcome everywhere.
Your money can still be easily spent in a variety, I'm sure, of healthcare for-profit places that will still exist to go above and beyond what the state provides.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. You can, they say, oh, there's these waiting times. Well, if you're rich, just like anywhere, you're not waiting for shit in England. You can pay to have the surgery done.
Yeah, if you have the money, you can get in quick. I understand people are worried about that, you know, the excessive, the system being overloaded, whatever. But I have a feeling that over time that'll balance out.
Well, that doesn't even necessarily have to be the end option. You know, it's just something where there is actual regulatory compliance with healthcare. Like, okay, you can only like a profit cap. I don't know, something. If you want still in competition, right? You still want the system similar to what it is to resemble some sort of free market. But you can't. You have to still put some sort of cap to where, or make them be reinvesting money back in. You know, if they hit a certain percentage, they have to reimburse, all the policyholders, something like that.
Mm-hmm. A USA kind of does something like that for the military.
Yeah,
where we used to get checks back if you overpaid insurance what they needed in terms of their profit margin, and you'd get it back. So. That's pretty cool.
Something like that. I mean, you can still, so to where it's just not so grossly obvious. I don't know. It's not even, obvious isn't the right word. So there's a gross profit made off of just people paying into a system they may or may not use. And when they do need it, it's set up so they can't use it. I mean,
that's sort of where we are. You know, when you got, I don't even have a problem with these CEOs making these big dollars, if that's what the market will bear. I just have a problem with healthcare being monetized to the point where you got guys making
healthcare CEOs or CEOs in general.
Well, it's
230% of the average salary of an employee or something like that.
I do think that's a great conversation to have. Is about the wage gap that's occurred between the CEOs and the average worker in our country.
The C class, man. I mean, just executives, period.
Yeah, executives, period. The amount of money, whereas the average person's salary has been basically almost flat.
Yeah,
their salaries have gone up
astronomically, and companies are
because
they're all interchangeable. These people too. There's not the company wouldn't stop running tomorrow if the CEO is pulled out.
This is definitely true. I will counter that and say, most of the people that are in those jobs actually do a ton of work. They work incredibly. I mean, they make way more money than they should, but there's definitely.
I'm not saying they don't work hard. I'm not saying they don't deserve to be well compensated. I didn't say that at all.
I'm not going to say they're overcompensated, but I just don't want to go because that's kind of how sometimes how conversations generally and those guys don't even do anything. Like,
I know absolutely.
I know that's not what you said, but I just wanted to kind of just put that out there because I want to say let's assume that he has worked their asses off, which every CEO or executive I ever worked with did. But are they severely overcompensated versus what This is why I think companies like Costco is one of my favorite companies because the fact that they actually pay their employees living wages and you can have a career working for Costco.
Right.
And the shareholders and the people that are beating them down. They came in, you got to lower wages. You got to be more competitive with other companies. You can lower the wages and still get workers. And like, yeah, but I don't want those workers.
Right.
I pay the people that are invested in their job, and look at how great. I personally really enjoy that store. The quality of their products, the quality of the service. It's great, and it's just it's a basic. It's a grocery store essentially, or a big box store. But you know that the person sitting across from you is actually making some of the money that you're spending, and you just feel a little better about it, as opposed to.
Well, it makes you want to go to the store because, like you said, you're gonna have professionals there. Like in the old days, like my grandfather worked for Sears for 35 fucking years as a salesman and an install manager, right? And he knew people on a first name basis. They'd walk in, "Hey Roy, how you doing?" Right? And Roy knew his shit. He knew everything, every water heater, every how to install every piece of equipment that Sears fucking sold backwards and forwards. He could answer any question truthfully.
Yeah.
Like, go in and ask somebody about a product in a department store now. You'll be lucky they can even fucking understand your sentence.
They go to the computer, they look it up. Here's the thing that interesting. We talk about the good old days, which I don't think exists, but there's definitely great things from the past we've lost, right?
Oh, sure. And evolution or de-evolution of retail.
So my question, another thing to talk about is has the modern business model just absolutely destroyed this sort of customer service and quality of product thing that you're talking about? Because they don't have to pay their employees that kind of money, so they don't have the same buy-in from their employees that they did in the past. Is that true? And is it because we've gotten because capitalism has gotten such a head of steam that the only thing that matters is those quarterly reports and all that, and they just crush wages as much as they can because that's just an expense to them at the cost of this. You know what? The people are going to come anyway. But then, of course, now there's no Sears, so I don't know. There was no salespeople in Sears anymore. There's no salespeople in any fucking store anymore. I mean, it's not like Sears held on to the salesmen. Yeah.
They weren't like the last bastion of salespeople. I mean, there's a few stores that are doing, big box stores that are still doing fairly well, or okay, I would say, like Nordstrom's, right? And they have true salespeople when you go in there. People there have worked there for years.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's one of and people associate their purchase with that individual, right? Not just so much with Nordstrom's, right?
Interesting.
So like you think that if any store wanted to be competitive in some fashion and get people back in, they would try and recreate that experience, not make it so inorganic, freaking Formica, just it's so plastic and just typical, like in annoying, like where you're just like when you walk into a Best Buy, I'm just grossed out by the people who are there. You know what I mean? Who are working there? Like they're just working there. They can't really help me. Right? They don't know anything about the equipment they're selling. Like I know more than they do. And it's like.
I'm actually gonna because because I just went to Best Buy to buy some gear, and I actually had really good service, and I was with you 100%. Like I told my parents, "Oh, don't get Best Buy's Geek Squad. No, don't do it because they hire idiots. They don't care about the person being qualified." I was in the Best Buy right by my house, and I got to tell you, every person that helped me. First of all, there was a ton of them. I even quoted, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of you people here. I'm surprised because usually electronic stores, man, it's minimal staff.
Yeah, it's a ghost town
against Amazon and stuff. But not only that, they were interested in what I was trying to do. And I had a couple people, and they passed me. Oh, you know what? That guy's an expert, and I actually got really good help. So I would say,
was it like a Tuesday or something? Maybe they were bored.
No. It might have been a Tuesday. But my point is, I agree with you 100% in my dealings with Best Buy. But again, companies can change. They can maybe they got new leadership or whatever.
Well, maybe they're recognizing that. Maybe that's our. Started the genesis where because it's what I'm finding.
So I'm going to build.
So here's what I'm finding on now with Amazon. What I still love Amazon. Everybody loves the order stuff online. What I really used to really like, and it's in the beginning stages of it, is being able to read the reviews of people who actually bought the products. Right.
Yeah.
But now I think those things are so oversaturated. I don't feel like that's genuine anymore. Right. I don't feel like that feedback is necessarily 100% true.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of staged garbage out there. It's pretty easy for them to hire people, the company, not just Amazon, but the company selling the product, right? These are big fucking companies. They have a lot of money. They can do a lot of things with that profit, right?
Yeah. And I do know that in the news, I did read some stories a couple of years ago about companies getting prosecuted for doing that same type of thing.
Right.
So I think there's some controls on it now, and a lot of But how would you really?
But I'm just saying, I don't feel as comfortable. I don't feel as. I used to
agree.
feel 100%.
I feel like you got to
those.
cross-reference it with a couple of different
Yeah.
sites. If this same product keeps showing
Yes.
up and the reviews seem real and not just, hey, it was the greatest thing ever.
Right.
It's an actual review.
Yes.
Then you feel a little bit better.
Right.
But I got to tell you, I can't tell you how many times that I type in like, oh, this is an interesting product. Let me get this review, and it comes up, and the first 10 sites are from the product itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you can't even get around because they've gotten their search engine
they paid so
optimization.
much for the search engines to get their name, their name punched up first with the exact data they want you to see. Yeah, so like that's my point. So then now, if they're gonna, as a consumer, if I can go someplace and actually have a conversation with somebody about a product that actually knows something about it, about the product I want to see, then I would be into that. You know what I mean? Because I'm not 100%.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, that would you'd think that would be the way the retail stores
Right.
want to go. Because if you're gonna have a bricks and mortar store, there's got to be a reason to draw me in there. And right now, except for very few stores, there's not.
None.
Costco, I think, competes directly against Amazon. For me,
Oh, sure.
because I get it, whatever. So why don't you go ahead and let's move on to the next section. It's called Quote of the Day, and a
Quote
sideshow.
of the day from a great head. So that's what we're going to transition into next. So this quote is from Frank Herbert from one of the Dune books. If you think of yourself as helpless and ineffectual, it is certain you will create a despotic government to be your master. The wise despot, therefore, maintains among his subjects a popular sense that they are helpless and ineffectual.
Interesting. Okay. So why did you pick that particular quote for today? What was the
Well, I mean,
genesis of this?
it's in my lifetime, certainly. I've never seen us have quite such a despot as we do currently as the president of the United States of America. So to me, it's a very poignant quote from that regard where, he wants to keep not so much sense that they're helpless without him, right? He is their savior. He is going to make, all the brown people go home and all the coal mines reopen. And, it's going to be 1952 all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they're ineffectual, essentially. They can't be, the white middle-class American cannot exist without the help of Donald Trump.
Yeah, which is interesting because one of the things he even said during the campaign, I'm the only one that can do it.
Right. Without me, you're finished. Like, this is your last hurrah. Look, the brother just was in the office, right? Okay, the black guy was just here. Now they want to send you a woman, right?
Yeah.
It's like the old white honky apocalypse, right?
Yeah, that's.
And he's the only one that can prevent it from happening.
It is funny, but there's a lot of. I mean, it was really kind of a little bit upsetting. Before we get to Trump, just the way. Well, I don't. Yeah, with Obama, the way he was attacked, like that there the fact that he was black. People say, "Oh, it wasn't because of the race or whatever." I mean, they had lynch. I mean, obviously, this is the extremists and the nut jobs, but the extremists, the people that we would consider extremists and nut jobs,
to Kenya.
have moved way into the mainstream,
right?
And are affecting our elections and are holding state houses and stuff.
Yes, the guy who literally ran the crazies of all the conspiracy theories into the ground. Donald fucking Trump is the president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The whole birther movement. He led the fucking birther movement.
Yeah,
the most insulting thing. Among any kind of what white president has ever undergone such a scrutiny of where they were born?
Yeah, and the absurdity of it all too. Like somehow his mother figured out that he might be president one day,
and that he was in the fucking Senate.
Which he's a yeah. It's hard. And again, I talk about people in their blind spots in their worldview, but and I think something that needs to get said about that is let's call it out. I mean, listen, if you listen to Fox News and AM radio for all your news sources, then I understand how you can get there because they are really,
well, let's
really
say, a hard right AM radio. I'm sure there's some decent talk radio that's not all hard right on AM.
That's true. I don't want a monolith. There's actually good talk radio out there as well as everybody else. But, so you talked about this despot. And then what I think is great about this timing of this is because I just read an article. It was a video that somebody did. University of Chicago professor was the main driver behind it, but he was comparing the behaviors of Donald Trump to Hugo Chavez and how Hugo Chavez.
Yeah,
and it was interesting.
That's a very good comparison.
Well, the interesting thing is because he was obviously into socialism and a different political formulation, but the despot stuff was all there.
Oh, the demagoguery.
Yeah, it's
100%.
You got to understand that these things are just tools. It could be a hammer, it could be a drill. They're just using a different one to accomplish the same thing. And we've seen this in the past. What I thought was really interesting, there's a couple things I thought that caught my eye, because the first one was that he didn't reference Hitler at all, which people don't. People go to the Hitler references so quickly, and there's just so much baggage that goes there.
It's too much.
But
I saw
so he used
like
Hugo Chavez, I think, because Hugo Chavez,
Right.
like Hitler, came to power legally,
Sure.
attained his position legally, attained
Right.
his power legally.
Oh, yeah,
He didn't
exactly.
do anything against the laws of the country to
None.
get there. Hitler did early on do some illegal stuff. He went to jail when he wrote Mein Kampf because he tried to do it physically, and he realized if I just manipulate the political system, I can attain this height of power. He did that, and then he basically stripped away democratic rights of everybody, and then he became the Fuhrer. And we all know what happened there. Now, we don't want to compare Donald Trump to Hitler because, again, that is completely unfair.
It's not.
There's absolutely no reason to do that. But I thought about the interesting about the articles that he went to Hugo Chavez.
Right.
And the people that sort of responded to the article, depending on what their worldview was, like, oh, this is just a hatchet piece on Trump, da-da-da-da-da, this is fake news. And that was one of those things like, this isn't fake news. This is a man just making comparisons, showing how Hugo Chavez...
There's no news in it. It's a
came
fucking
to
opinion
power.
piece.
It was an opinion piece, and it was...
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It wasn't about news. It wasn't about this
No.
something did happen or didn't happen. He said...
The man was simply making a correlation.
He was making the correlation,
That's
and he pointed out several times, and Trump has done nothing illegal, at least that we're aware of. I mean, there's the thing, but he is the legitimate president of the United States. So you people say, oh, he's not my president. Yes, he actually is. Just like George Bush was, just like Barack Obama was, just like Bill Clinton was.
Let's just say he hasn't done anything illegal since he's taken office. Didn't he get nailed for the whole Trump University? He had to make a settlement out of for all those people.
Those are civil things, and he's obviously in a lot of trouble from a lot of different
so I wouldn't say that he's
angles.
not.
But that's what happens when you become president.
Well, you have to
everybody
settle.
goes after you.
Well,
I mean, that's the problem.
he was already in deep shit before that.
Yeah, because who knows? I mean, everybody's
the
suing.
Trump University thing was going on for years before
The Trump University thing was, I think we're pretty certain that was a huge old scam that took a
yeah,
lot away
and
from
just because
people.
he settled, you know how those settlements are for rich people. You don't have to actually admit wrongdoing, but you end up paying somebody $250 million or whatever the settlement is. I don't know what it is, but
I think it was Mel Brooks. It's good to be the king,
right?
And that still exists today. It's like basically, if you're loaded, you got listen, you can work the system. The system is set up for you if you're loaded. But that's the system in every society since man is
I agree.
ever existed.
Yeah,
So
no doubt about that.
we can go on from there. So let's move on.
Back
Though.
to the
Let's talk
Death
about the Megyn Kelly interview and the Alex Jones situation.
Yeah, so we did touch on that last week, right? So we had brought it up, in some other context of them, skewering her about bringing him on to television onto the show, and making her essentially the scapegoat for it. But that which really wasn't really to what to focus on. And Matt Taibbi wrote an article to what we should have been focusing on, and except her actually bringing him out to and outing him as the crackpot he really is, and how necessary it was to do this on a show with someone who has much, I guess, popularity, street cred in that, in the news sphere as Megyn Kelly, to really bring him on and essentially let him roast himself. She didn't really have to do anything with, ask him some poignant questions and allow his, large blubbering head to just engulf itself.
Right.
And which it did. Right. And that's what's the point of his article is. It's like we shouldn't be eviscerating her because yes, the guy was there's a whole side of the conversation where people are saying he shouldn't even been given a voice. They're like, no, his voice is absolutely should be heard, and then outed for the idiocy that it is.
Right. As soon as you try to block, I think the article, one of the great things he said is like even the most boring book becomes the most popular book if you censor it or if you ban it.
Mm-hmm.
And so by censoring him
Why
or
would you,
banning
exactly,
him,
yes.
you and it goes on both sides
gives
because
him power.
You make him powerful
Yes.
by pushing him aside
Yes.
instead of exposing him and saying, okay, well, this is what your opinion is. Let's
get you on national television so we can all see it.
Yeah. So you said that Sandy Hook was a hoax. What happened to the children? I mean, he said I think he claimed in a court case that he's an entertainer or an illusionist. What was the term
it was
he
some
used?
bullshit like that.
Yeah,
he said he was an entertainer. It was exactly right.
Yeah, and so that what he says is just, he's just there to,
yeah, he's just there to make people,
he turns all red and he goes crazy and stuff like that.
entertain people with his zany political.
Yeah, but the problem is when people start to believe that stuff.
Like the president.
Was he the one with the Pizzagate thing? Was he the one that really, remember the guy that they said that Hillary Clinton was running a sex?
No, but here's his main thing. Claim to fame was the 3 million illegal votes from illegal aliens. 3 million illegal aliens voted, and then Trump said it literally like 2 days later.
Yeah, that's what's scary. Is when you've got the president's
he has the president's ear.
Yeah.
So
terrifying.
That's the fact that there was no 3 million illegal votes. There's completely
there's just no evidence to
no
support
evidence
that
at all. And illegals don't fucking vote. They don't want to go anywhere near any kind of concentrated, city hall power source. I mean, are you kidding me?
Well, what's funny is if you think about it, if you want to commit voter fraud, right, then how do you do it? You don't do it one voter at a time, because that's just you're going to want to hit the center of the vote. You want to hack the software and change the votes.
Yeah, it's or you want old school like registration fraud bullshit. They're going to get into the machines.
Yeah, you got to get into the machines because you can't change things. I mean, you got to change millions and millions. You can't get millions and millions of people to sway an entire election.
Right.
That's just too hard to do. Just logistically. So it's not like the old days, like when Joe Kennedy would just every union boss was mobbed up. Okay, everybody votes for Kennedy, and then stuff the boxes, and then get these guys out of the room so we can stuff them a bunch of times.
Or like gangs in New York, where the same guy registers 3 different times.
Yeah.
Boss Tweed,
vote early and vote often.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things have been safeguarded against, and that's why they have these election reports. That's why they go through all of this detail to make sure that our elections are.
Yeah, it's a very scrutinized process, as it should be.
It is, but I think a lot of folks they're so willing to believe the conspiracy.
Well, they're so detached from the process, they don't even know how the voting system works.
No,
But they're sure there's fraud. Oh my God!
There's got to be fraud.
There's got to be illegals voting. But
why can't you show an ID? We didn't have to show an ID for 200 years, and all of a sudden we do, because the process already.
I have a voter registration card. Yeah, I have a voter registration card. How do I know to show up at that precinct? I was sent it in the mail,
and my name is on the list, and then they have to cross-check my vote, and they have to go through a bunch of processes. So,
and what are you gonna do about mail-ins?
I have to kill the 3 million.
What are you gonna do about mail-ins now? I'm doing mail-in now. I get early ballot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Every time.
So how the fuck do they know who in my household is filling that out and signing it? How the fuck do they know that?
They don't.
Exactly. Suck a fart. You can't. It's a completely baseless argument.
Right.
With the whole ID thing.
There's
a way to beat every system. There's a smarter mouse. Whatever mousetrap you want, someone can beat that.
Yeah. That ain't it.
Yeah.
That's like the dumbest way to go about it.
Yeah.
The bottom level. It doesn't make any sense.
That is, the whole ID. That is strictly to.
And then the fact that there was no evidence to support any of those things.
There was no voter fraud.
Yeah. There wasn't. There hasn't been. And it's funny because he won. So the last thing he'd want to prove is voter fraud.
Yeah. And she grilled him on that too. She grilled him on the illegal aliens thing. And it was, it was fantastic. And just like that's the great thing about Taibbi. He pointed that out. Like, you guys are, the media should be praising. There should be a lot of support for her in the journalistic community. Was his other point in that article?
Yeah, because she showed up and she's a very smart woman. I
Right.
don't know why she worked for Fox News for so many years, but
Yeah.
a lot of times she pushed back on Fox. I mean, sometimes
that's why they kept
did
her,
some
'cause she was a
stupid
moderate
stuff, like
voice,
She said,
I thought.
Santa Claus is white." She made that comment.
Yeah,
one
she
time.
did say some really
She did
weird
some
honky
dumb
shit.
stuff, but
she did do that.
I'm not to throw somebody under the bus forever for saying something dumb. But I think she's a former prosecutor. No, she's a former attorney.
She's definitely an attorney. I mean,
and she's a very smart woman, and I think that she, we'll see what she does with her position at NBC now that she's there. But I wasn't particularly interested when she was with Fox because so much of their content is directed, and it was obvious. But you could count on her, and there's a few people that actually work. Chris Wallace is another one that will.
He's a schlep too.
He's conservative.
I mean, he would.
You don't like
how
him
he would
because
go
he has
after
different
Jon Stewart was pathetic. He was obsessed with Jon Stewart.
But he got his ass kicked by Jon Stewart. It was funny.
Every single time.
But again, I don't. All right, let's move on.
All right, so that was really good. Great, good job.
All right, take a break.
No, so the next one I got on here, which I thought was, and I wasn't sure it was you or John, which group of guys were sitting around talking about this, but
yeah, I'm not familiar with the security thing.
What's it?
Is that what you're on?
Yeah, the militia group. So this just happened in Oregon. So obviously there was all the trouble in Portland where the supremacist guy, killed those 2 dudes while where they tried to stop him from hurting or whatever he was going to do to those, those Muslim ladies. So now the far right Republicans in Oregon are using these militias as security at their events, which is something I predicted with the whole entire Trump thing, where he's inciting people at his events during the election, right, to attack media people. To there was brawls in almost every single one of his fucking rallies, right? So like to me, the next step to that was to organize these people, which he does. He still essentially tours, right? He still goes on these little campaign type events where he waves the bloody flag and rattles the saber, right, to keep them, I guess, hooked in.
Yeah.
So what's the what's the next? Oh, I'm gonna need my own people. I mean, there it is right there. They're doing it in Oregon. These whatever I don't think it's the oath taker guys or whatever they call these guys, this militia that they're gonna use. But I mean, they're essentially sanctioning their own paramilitary groups. That's pretty fucking creepy.
It's terrifying. Yeah. And historically, again, if you go back to the Hugo Chavez, if you go back to history, what despots do, you're checking off the boxes.
Yes, exactly. They're exactly. Now they got their own little forces to crack heads in any kind of demonstration that they don't like or agree with to try and undermine it. Oh, now there's always and the counter supporters. Even though there's like 12 of them with bats, they're counted as somehow equal to the 5,000 people they're standing out there in protest, right?
Well, the same thing happened at at Berkeley, or a similar thing where they had these the agitators that came in and did all the destruction, and we don't know where they came from. They were organized, they were hood. I mean, it was like this other group, and then all of a sudden Berkeley became this pariah, where Berkeley has always been one of the bastions of open thought, and people can everybody can come. I mean,
they shut down Ann Coulter, didn't they? Was that at Berkeley?
Did they shut down Eric Coulter, or did they?
No, Ann Coulter.
Oh, Ann Coulter. Did they shut her down, or did they just change the date of her event?
I thought they shut her down, which I didn't agree with personally.
No. They should never shut her down. I don't think.
Are you kidding me? Like,
I think
again,
there was
back to what Matt Taibbi said. Like, give her the pulpit. Let her. The more she talks, the more she loses credibility. In my opinion.
Yeah, the more give them more opportunity to present their ideas, and then you've got something to destroy.
Let her roll. She's bound to say something majorly asinine.
Yeah, she's something special. So, sorry. Okay, you know what? Let's move on to the healthcare bill.
We already talked about it.
We already talked about it real quick, but we didn't talk about the bill itself.
It's pretty much DOA, man. It's not going to pass.
I don't think so. Ted Cruz just offered an amendment that basically
he's such a fucker.
I don't know what that guy.
God damn.
But he offered an amendment that basically said, hey, you can offer people policies that don't meet any of the Obamacare requirements. So basically, you can people have the right to buy a crap policy for less money. That doesn't cover them for anything. Then they have their health coverage. Ultimately, the hardest part, and this is the part that maybe will appeal to conservatives, but if they don't pay the bill, what are we going to do? Let them die? We don't do that. Are they not going to go to the hospital when they have a heart attack or whatever? No, they're going to go, and then we're going to pay for it. So if either they pay or we pay. So let's get
there's the point that they don't seem to want to discuss, and it's not even really. They just mentioned sometimes on the opposite of the argument is okay. So all these people are going to start falling off the the Medicaid and Medicare, right? And what are they going to go back to? What were they doing prior to this when they had no health care? They were just going to the emergency room. Right? And guess what? We're footing that fucking bill again. So the cost doesn't just go away. Oh, I don't have to pay for it. No, that cost will then be translated back to you again by the hospital as prices continue to go up because they have to treat these people that come in off the street.
Right, and the money's got to come from somewhere.
Who do you think pays for that shit? Yeah. Right? Yeah, they're going to bill the guy. He's not even going to pay his premiums. How's he going to pay he's not going to pay the fucking hospital. You are going to pay the hospital. As your the person who they can charge. All that cost will be then put back onto us, essentially. And none of the conservatives discussed that. Okay, so we're going to go back to where we had before when all these people couldn't get health care, right?
Right.
So what did they do? They went to they have to go to the hospital. They're bleeding out of their stomach. I mean, they have to go to the emergency room. I mean, they'll be using those again.
And then we pay the bill.
Yeah.
It's like, all right. Loss of civility. So were we ever really that civil to begin with?
Yeah.
I don't think we were.
That's a good point. That's something I wanted to talk about because, what I like to go back to, there's these period pieces. A good one is again Gangs of New York, right? Because what I like about that is is the political aspect of that show, where they show all the campaigning that's going on to set the tone of what's happening in New York City during that period of time, right?
Right.
And it's all, these damn Irishmen are taking our jobs. And that's literally what they're saying, because that's what's happening. It's the mass Irish invasion, right?
Right.
So it's us clean Americans, and these dirty Irishmen, who do a job that a black guy used to do for a nickel, or do for a nickel what a black guy used to do for 10 cents. I mean, they're the lowest form of life, right?
Yeah.
So, there's this viciousness that's there, this undercurrent of incivility in politics. Like, it's cutthroat. Literally, in that movie, one of the sheriff gets murdered, right, in the street by a gangster.
Right.
Right? I mean, that kind of shit happened, right? So, and then brawls. Like, there was a really good, it was John C. Calhoun, or one of the most flamboyant Southern congressmen right before the Civil War, ended up like caning some dude from like Massachusetts in Congress, right, over the whole slavery deal, right? So like as an American, there's like that knife fight mentality, I think. That from prison colony in Georgia, we're not necessarily, but we forget continuously, the cream of the crop who came over here. We were the unwanted. That's what the Statue of Liberty represents. Send me your tired, send me your poor, and most of us were exactly that when we got here, right? And to attain some level of like, kind of accept the fact that we're on our way, right? But to say like that we've lost all of it to begin with, like how much did we really? I think we're still really honing all of our true civil.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Things have been ugly since. Well, politics has always been ugly. If you go back, and you can go back to prior, not civilizations, but countries of power, like be it European or go back to Romans and the Greeks, and there's all kinds of this stuff that's going on forever. The difference we have today is we have this information that comes pouring out. So now we have the ability to actually communicate at a much more high level. Like, more people are in the game than ever before.
Right.
So that's kind of a good thing, but also it's showing that all of these things are coming out there, and this sort of like, hey, everybody's very nice when you don't know them very well, but it's like remember the Real World. This is what happens when people stop being nice and start getting real. Whatever their tagline was, but. That's actually pretty prophetic, because that's what's kind of going on. We're seeing all of this information, all these people inputting. I mean, look at us. We're doing a podcast.
Right.
We don't have jobs in media. No one would hire us to do shit.
No.
Not. I mean, but here we are.
I know,
we can go out there.
I have a pretty good voice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree.
There is the handsome factor, I guess. I don't know, but the point is that that we're really just seeing the same thing that we've seen in the past, but now we have much more ability to integrate.
But if you look at we expected levels of civility, I think, in more modern times from our politicians, right?
I think we do expect more out of ourselves.
It's fine that we sometimes cane each other on the street, but we really don't want that happening in the Beltway.
Well, yeah, but then there's people that think, what? Hey, that's the way it used to be, man. Some guy mouthed off, then you popped him in the jaw, and that's the way it should be, And it's like, well, I think we evolved past that.
Yeah.
And people want to devolve back to it. And like, no. How about we just have
How about you teach your fucking kids some respect? I mean, it's gotten too far at that point already. If they're at the point where everyone who says something to them that they find disrespectful and they're willing to throw down on it, then there's something that systemically happened long before they got to that incident to make them in that mindset.
And what's funny, it's the same exact thing that they complain about as people who are offended too much. Like who are like, oh my, you're too politically correct. It's actually the same exact logical chain. Hey, somebody crosses your line because you have this sort of picture view of the world, and anybody who's not in that picture is somehow your enemy or who's offended you, and you're gonna throw down on them, like you said. Instead of saying, wow, I wonder why would you want that? What motivates you? Or try to understand what other people want, because at the end of the day, we're still all Americans, right? We're supposed to be the same family. Yeah, we're going to have our differences, but I have differences with my brothers and my sisters, but
we're all part of the same great experiment.
Yeah, we're all part of the same great experiment.
You kind of hit that earlier. It's like people all wanting to go back. There's nothing to go back to. It's always been an experiment. It's always been an evolution.
Right.
And we all have to actively participate in molding that evolution.
Exactly.
Right? It can't just be. There was no everyone. I think I feel like it. I always say this, but I feel like that's what this diorama that they build. It's like 1952 America, right? That's that. It never really existed. Read Jack Kerouac, read On the Road. There was all kinds of people who were disaffected in the 50s that didn't.
A lot of people get left out.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I hate to tell you, but the 50s might have been great if you're looking at like Mayberry, USA.
Yeah.
But I didn't notice a lot of black people or Mexican people or Chinese people.
Yeah,
and our country is extremely diverse. In fact, we're not even going to be, we're not even going to be majority white people in the next 20, 30 years or whatever it is. What about their history?
Right.
Which was funny. There's a great line somebody used once, and they were like, the guy said, "How come there's no White History Month?" And the dude's like, "Every month is White History.
Right.
Read your history book. Every month is White History Month."
Yes.
Hey, it's not your fault, or but you got to be born white, and this whole white privilege thing that people think doesn't exist. Like, listen, man, it's not your fault you got it there. But you're taking advantage of it because you don't have much of a choice. So just be happy about it, but don't come back and tell me you need a White History Month. Like, come the fuck on. Are you serious?
Yeah.
What about white history do you not know?
Right.
Tell me about the Cherokee history. What do you about Cherokee history? They were here way before us. What about, you could go on and on and on about whose history is completely, I could grab 100 textbooks from 100 different schools.
Right.
And there would be how many pages on any other ethnicity's history.
Right.
Right. They might give a chapter to Black history because they made a push for it.
Right.
Then they should. I think
Right.
they're a big part of our history, and they're basically kind of. So I don't know. People are crazy. Some people's kids, man. It's just every month is White History Month. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is DammitJim, and we're back with sports updates.
Yeah.
Not really updates. We're just going to talk about sports that we like.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the NBA right now.
NBA, the National Basketball Association.
Particularly two contracts that were signed.
Mm-hmm.
One by Steph Curry, which made him the highest paid basketball player in the history of the universe, for a $200 million, I think 5 years, I think it is 4 or 5 year contract. $200 million.
Because he can shoot the three.
I know he can.
Craig
Hodges he's a great player.
No, he's a great player. Obviously, he can do things
dribble.
Obviously, he can do things that nobody else can do.
He's a great ball handler. I mean, the kid is an awesome, phenomenal. I'm not denying the fact that the guy's an awesome NBA player. He's absolutely one of the top 5 players in the NBA, no doubt about it.
Right.
But it's just the money. I mean, that's where I think that the sport is just. And then, okay, so his contract, kind of get it, right? Because he is one of the best players. If not, you can have the argument he is the best player in the NBA, right? He can be in the argument.
Yeah, he can be in the conversation.
But the other guy,
one of the guys you're going to bring up, right?
This guy Drew Holiday, who's probably middle of the line, probably slightly above average point guard.
Yeah.
$130 million.
Yeah.
$130 million.
I know. You think about that, you're like,
obscene amount of money, and it's come to. I'm wondering how much longer this is sustainable, because we can afford to go to an NBA basketball game, but we don't.
I know,
because it's so obscenely. It's ridiculous how much it costs to go to a game. To sit in any of the seats that we sat in for years, which we usually pay, which was a lot, $100 a seat. Now you're talking $150, $175.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't 20 years ago.
Right.
This isn't back in '08.
Mm-hmm.
This is like 5-10 years ago.
Right.
It's obscene. Like the math just doesn't work in my mind. Like who can continue to afford to support this whole entire NBA, and not just the NBA. I mean, all the sports are in just similar trajectory. The NBA just happened to sign the big television contract, which led to a lot bit more money to be available for contracts. Right.
Right. Exactly. And you're like, well, if they're getting all this money from the contracts, why do the tickets have to be so much? But I guess if people are still paying it, that is a perfect, sort of.
Well, the big I'm pretty sure the NBA does revenue sharing, just like NFL. So small markets don't have to worry about it, right? Because like places like Chicago, New York, regardless, they just sell out all the time anyway.
And they're going to pay their bills.
Yeah.
So the industry within itself, is doing fine. But at the same time, I'll tell you what, it's not a basketball story, but it's a baseball story. But to me, this is sort of my point. When I was a kid, like growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, I could go to a Cubs game
Right.
for $1.50.
Right.
Could get in, sit in the bleachers. I was alone. There wasn't a lot of people there. It was hot. It was always in the daytime.
Right.
But the point is, it was like, for me, it was the last golden age where I could follow my Cubs, which was miserable because we had some great players and stuff,
Right.
and I just loved. I knew everybody on the roster. I could probably almost still tell you the entire lineup from like the 1981 Cubs.
Right.
And I would sit in the bleachers and I could smell the grass and I'd be right there for $1.50.
Right.
I went back and it was Brian. Brian had some bleacher seats,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Hey man, you want my bleacher seats? I bought them. I thought the Cubs were gonna be good this year, but I got these extra seats."
Right.
I said, "Sure, man. I'd love to go see the game." So how much? He's like, $60 a ticket. I'm like, out of your fucking mind? It's a goddamn metal bench in the sun, and you want me to pay you $60?
Bleachers are popular, man.
I'm like, that I could almost go the entire season.
It was used to be for the White Sox. It was $10.
$10.
Get
But that
you
was in like general admission. You actually got a seat with like handles or
Yeah.
armrests and stuff.
Yeah, this is no, it was general. No, it wasn't general. It was it got you into like they have a bleacher section, not a bleacher section, like a standing section, but then it got you into the bar, and you could go out on the patio.
Well, you're an adult, man. I'm talking
Yeah.
when I was a kid.
Yeah,
When I was a kid, I obviously wasn't
I was like 20,
20. So you were
21.
going. Yeah,
But-
you got into the bar, but
Yeah, so
but still, it was like what, $10 to get in.
Yeah,
So
it
that
was like,
every
where
man
can you
could
get-
literally
yeah,
go.
who could-
Hey man, we could go every night.
Yeah.
We could go like all week.
Yep. And I was
And
a
it
poor,
was like, but the thing about for me was
graduate.
like, the reason I'm a Cubs fan at this age is because when I was a kid, I followed them so closely. I did abandon them for a while when they let.
Dude,
Greg
when's the last
Maddux
time? When's the last time you've been to Wrigley Field?
Boy, that's a good question. Probably early '90s, mid '90s.
Yeah,
Because I haven't gone back to the
changed a
field.
lot.
I haven't seen the renovations, whatever. But I used to work there.
Just the people. I'm saying it's not the same people.
No, well, I'll tell you what happened in '84 when we actually had a really good team. All of a sudden, the Cubs became an in thing.
Yep.
Never was like that before. I mean, '83, and if you haven't heard Lee Elia's rant, the Chicago Cubs manager from 1983, you should Google that right now and listen to it because it's one of the best sports rants ever.
I wouldn't do it.
They started out like 8 and I don't know 14 and 22 or 8 and 22, some horrible thing, and he just went off. It was awesome.
Right.
But anyway, that's how bad they were the year before. But the next year, all of that stuff was the Dallas Green era. It was the Rick Sutcliffe era. Leon Durham, the Bull.
Was Ryan Sandberg on that team?
Ryan Sandberg was playing second. Ron Say was playing third.
The
Penguin. Yeah. Do we have Dawson for that team? I'm pretty
No,
sure
he
had
wasn't
Dawson.
on that team.
No, I think that was my.
He was all on losing teams.
before.
He was
No.
he was late 80s.
Yeah, he was.
He
after
was
that.
not one winning season.
He was after that. I'd have to go back and who was the red? We had a ginger playing right field, number 6.
Mike Moreland or something.
Yeah,
like
Keith
that.
Moreland.
Keith Moreland.
Yeah.
I know more about these fucking Cubs than you do.
No, I'm just older and more senile. But no, I was there for the whole thing. And Jody Davis.
Yeah, the one good year he had in the majors was that year.
Jody. No, he also had Harry Carey loved Jody Davis. He was singing his song. So anyway, but after that '84, then they just kind of blew up.
Back to the point. Where's it get expensive?
That's where it got expensive.
Okay.
That's when it got expensive, 1984, and all of a sudden you couldn't afford to go to a game anymore. It just got crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
But they put lights in there, and then still an awesome experience. Still go to Wrigley Field if you can,
I
or at
wouldn't
least
do
hang
that.
out in the neighborhood.
Fuck the Cubs.
Yeah, I know. I told you my buddy Alex, his line was like, my dream season is Cubs 0-162.
I'm way more evil than that. I wanted to lose in Game 7 last year.
I know
was-
you did.
That
It was one of the best,
season.
Game 7s
They
in
go
history.
all the way and lose in Game 7. That would have been
No.
ideal for
They
me, but they fucking won it.
Well, they tried to lose it. They tried hard. But
He was a pretty good team. That's
it was a good team.
Yeah.
You know when in 2005 when the White Sox won, Alex wanted them to do the parade around Wrigley Field.
that would have been awesome. I would have flown in for that for
Yeah, I'm
sure,
sure you
man.
would
I
have.
would've
It's
been-
like wrong.
So yeah, there's that. We can end with that.
All right, my
Let's,
friend.
end
We
with
have hit.
all of our major topics for today.
We have. So once again, folks, if you're still listening, which I'd be surprised if you are. I'm kidding.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Um,
What's wrong with you? Get off. Go to bed.
Go to bed. Old man, keep me up late. So yeah, we've hit another 40 minutes. We got about 75 minutes of material.
So did you turn it off?
No, we're still recording.
Oh.
So we got to wrap this up. I mean, I'll
And
edit out some-
everybody, thank you and good night from Sideshow Chopped. And
Damn it, Jim. Damn it, Jim.
good night.
Bye-bye.